All right, Sharon, hi, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you? Looks like you had a great weekend.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. So just tell everybody a little bit about, who you are, where you live, your real estate strategy, what you've done so far, and any challenges, and then we'll have people ask questions, and then we'll move more into like the tax piece, if there's any tax or entity structuring or financial planning that we've had to do, and then we'll just take questions until we are ready. Then we will move on to Samantha.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Sharon. Hello, everyone, and I'm based in New York State. I was in New York City for 30 years, and then in the beginning of the pandemic, moved up to the Catskill Mid-Hudson Valley region, and because I wanted to live here for a long time, and so uh, now I am living the dream. It's great. So I started about 10 years ago when I was in New York City, and it's kind of funny. I was always obsessed with real estate, and my family had invested in buildings from time to time. So I heard that chatter in the background, and so when it came time for me to purchase my own place, I realized in the city I just wanted a yard for my dog. That's it, and I couldn't afford the price of a condo that had a yard. So I realized the only way I could do that was to buy a multifamily where I had the garden unit and my tenants would help pay the mortgage. So that's actually how I got started. And in being the cost of living and price of real estate is very high in New York City, I had to look in emerging neighborhoods or neighborhoods that were rapidly, no one had looked at before, but now there was starting to be a buzz about it. So I started by taking a risk and investing in a particular neighborhood in Brooklyn that was up and coming, and bought a multifamily, and then ended up moving out and just holding it, and found really great tenants. And I held it, and it appreciated in value tremendously, and also cash flowed. It was great. But then when I moved up here, wanted to transfer my properties to places within a closer proximity to where I lived in Ulster County. So ended up selling that house, doing a 1031 exchange, and now I've bought a couple of replacement properties. I have one more to go, and also have been doing some fix and flips up here. So, in terms of strategy, I would like to say that I have a concerted strategy, but it's been more like, access some equity from my house in Brooklyn, and then use that to do some flips up here. It was more like reacting to, well, there's some money to be made in this particular market at this particular time, and I'm going to do it. Now that I'm full time, my strategy is more. I like the idea of buy, renovate, refinance, rent. So buy and holds, and I like there's a housing crisis up here, and so ethically, I like this idea of rehabbing properties that were vacant before foreclosures and making them homes for people and providing housing in a place where housing is needed. So that's kind of where I'm ending up now.
Yeah, Melinda says is the BRRRR strategy. Yeah, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And your strategy is primarily buy and hold. I mean, you did the house hacking with, I thought that's very, very creative, rather than, not having anywhere at all, get a multi-unit and then rent out the rest of the unit, stay in one unit, get what you want. And then when it's time to move on, cash out and then move on to the next strategy. If you guys have questions for Sharon, please feel free to post it. What has been the most challenging thing being an investor for the last 10 years? What is it? What's been the most rewarding and what's been the most challenging?
Well, let's start with the good stuff first. The most rewarding has been, I love the design aspect of it. And I also love this, as I mentioned, this idea of providing good housing for people. So I've really enjoyed like the house. I'm doing a house hack right now in the house that I'm sitting in. And I've thoroughly enjoyed seeing this property go from a dilapidated, foreclosed property that needed everything from roof to septic to you name it. And now it's a really beautiful house. And, there are a lot of families that gave me offers on the house. And so it's going to be occupied and filled with love and life. And that makes me happy. So that part has been a lot of fun. And also, I guess also what's been fun is going through and assembling, like as I go through, I try out new people for different things and just feeling like I've found some really good people and yourself included. But like I miraculously found a really good contractor and a great real estate agent. And it's really fun to work with a team of people who are smart and teach me things every day. And and I can rely on them. So that's all been a really good part of it. And fortunately, I've made money off of this as well. So that's great. The challenges, though, it's not without challenges right now. Is converting from having a W-2 salary position to doing this full time. And having enough runway with cash flow to make it work. So that's been really challenging for me. But I think I'm coming out the other side and it's all working out. It just required a lot of persistence, a lot of meditation to allay any anxieties around that. And so that's definitely been a challenge. And also, just having to go through making a lot of mistakes with trusting the wrong contractor, that sort of thing, until I got to the right team.
Good. Thank you. So we have one question. Okay, Laurie, you go first, and then I'll ask Melinda's after.
Okay, thanks. Well, Sharon, congratulations for making the leap from your W-2 job to full-time investing. Was that hard? That's something I'm struggling with myself, and I'm lacking courage. Like, what was it that gave you that courage to leave the steady paycheck and go into full-time investing?
Some of it was just necessity. It was, there's instability in my job and in my W-2 job. And it was like, at one point I was faced with, well, I could get another one. And because I worked in the startup world, so there's a lot of volatility there. And I was like, well, do I want to continue doing this, or do I want to be in control of my fate? And so it was kind of at this crossroads where I just got to do it. And a lot of what drives me now is just, I'm innately, I have to do all this research. I have to do all this work because it's my livelihood. So it's highly motivating. And I just am naturally a bit of a risk taker. I had a really challenging job. I was a principal in the Bronx for a while, and which was an extremely challenging job. And one of my friends, who was also a principal in the Bronx, told me, she said, wait to worry. Like when I started being anxious, and just see if, your mind can invent 1,000 different ways of how everything's going to go wrong. And in reality, maybe one or none of those things will happen. And you've spent all of that time and mental energy invested in these negative stories. So it's better to just recognize that, let it go, say it's okay, and just say, what can I do to make myself better or successful in this moment? Like so if I face a challenge, just figure out what's my plan B, C, and D. What are the other ways around it? And I think those have been, that sort of mindset has been very helpful to me and is, kept me going.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think it's really good to do, like, if you get your finances and your accounting and your team, like a basic team set up, and it'll make it easier in terms of thinking of like giving yourself some leeway. And, I started small. I started with one property. And so it was.
Do you do all your lead generation yourself, or did you build out a complete team for different aspects of your business?
It was just kind of, I picked up people along the way as needed. So it started with the real estate agent. And then I was rehabbing properties up here. And so just reaching out, I actually used the Nextdoor app, which is really effective up here, to start finding people, and just told everyone I knew what I was doing. And so just through that networking, I was able to find good people. That's how I found Ebere, through my real estate agent. So it's just like talk to everyone, network as much as possible, and, contact people. And I tried them out, and a lot of them didn't work out. And then the ones but there were a bunch that did. And so I'm trying to keep them, keep a partnership with them alive.
Cool. Thanks. Congrats.
Thank you.
All right, Melinda said, how do you vet good tenants long-term, no hassle paying tenants?
Yeah, I had really good luck actually in Brooklyn. Like, one thing that I did when I renovate properties, I know I could do the lowest end rental, like renovations, but I know my target is sort of in the middle, more middle income folks. So I try and make my properties somewhat nice. Like, I'll still use like Home Depot level level materials, but they'll look nice. They'll look, or splurge on granite countertops, because I think when I create a more attractive environment, then there's more, I get more tenants applying. So that's one thing that I did. And to vet the tenants, they had to make 40 times the monthly income. I did credit checks, and references, and looked at financial documents. So I was pretty thorough in vetting them. And I actually was a real estate agent in New York City for a hot second doing rentals. So I kind of followed the same procedures that a rental agency would when I did it on my own.
So the experience of being an agent helped, because I've heard a lot, where people just jump into things, but sometimes you've seen that those that are successful are able to sometimes port experience from one industry to another, industry. Thank you. Eric has a question. How many tenants have you had to evict with the New York laws that are more favorable to non-paying tenants than to landlords? And how was that experience?
Well, I've been super lucky, and I haven't had to evict anyone. I've had good tenants the whole time. I mean, but granted, my portfolio is small. I'm sure someday it will come up. And especially being up here, it's a different, I think it's, the population isn't as financially, the demographic is different than there was in the city. I think in the city, everyone wanted to live in the neighborhood where my house was, and it was a nice house, so I had the pick of the litter. Whereas up here, I think it's a little bit different. So I'm sure it's something that I'll face at some point. But I need to. But I'm trying to set aside, or I do have set aside, the rainy day funds, like 6 months of reserves. So hopefully I'll be able to weather that, or hopefully I won't have to do it. I think, I'm just trying to be pretty rigorous upfront with vetting tenants.
So the last question that I want to ask Sharon is, you talked about doing the 1031 exchange. I think that's the most, I don't know how to explain that, but that was the most fulfilling thing I did that week. I'll just say that week, because Sharon came to me on a Tuesday. Here she has a property under contract, and she was going to be closing on Friday. And here she's talking to me Tuesday evening and saying, "Oh, I want to do a 1031." I was like,
Well, you're responsible for that.
Yeah. So I said, hold on a minute. And then we called our qualified intermediary guy, Blackacre, Bobby Levinson. I'm like, "Hey, Bobby, Sharon is closing by Friday. What are we going to do?" And that was a ton of money. She had built significant equity in the property. I think your taxes was going to be almost, what, 200? Some crazy amount. Yeah, something like that, a huge amount. And we're trying to see how we can mitigate that. So with Bobby talking to her, and, they got doing everything, share that whole experience. And how did you feel knowing that you were able to do this 1031?
Well, Ebere, this is the story that I tell everyone when I talk about I have a great CPA and why she's so great. Yeah, it was like I think it was our first meeting with the two of us. And I was like, oh, I was selling this property and I thought I'd hit a roadblock with getting a 1031 because I didn't know about like debt service loans. I didn't know about that whole world. And I was like, I was so over leveraged, or not over leveraged, but I was very leveraged on that house and didn't think, so I wasn't pulling out enough cash to spend the total sale price. And so I thought it was dead in the water until you were like, well, let me reach out to Bobby. And then by the end of that day, Bobby had Ebere had conferenced in me and Bobby, the 1031 exchange officer. And he was like, no, here's how you do it. And we can do it. And we'll have to do a rush on it. And I think the two of you also put me in touch with a lender who knew about all these commercial loans. And then I was off to the races because then I didn't end up going with that particular lender, but it opened up my mind to exploring all these commercial loans, like all these loan products that are available for investors. And so now, and I'm buying 3 properties in replacements as a result, and miraculously I've pulled off this 1031. Well, the third one's closing in a few weeks. So, hopefully we'll have pulled it off. But yeah, it was just a matter of that's why I was talking before about it's a matter of having a really good team and learning as much as you can, talking to everybody, because I thought I'd hit a dead end and I didn't. So I'm very appreciative that happened.
And also we were able to quickly help you set up also a solo 401k to be able to access cash. So there's a lot of things that are available when you're a business owner that is not available when you have a regular job. And knowing having the right connections and knowing people in the industry that could help you is amazing how much I've learned just talking to other people that I didn't even know was possible.